All right, let's talk about something that every single Salesforce developer needs to master, building modals and pop-ups in Lightning Web Components. You're gonna need this, so let's just dive right in. You know the situation, right? You need to show the user an alert, or maybe get them to confirm an action, but the last thing you want to do is send them to a whole new page and make them lose their context. Well, that is exactly the problem modals were designed to solve.
So what exactly is a modal? Just think of it like a pop-up or a dialog box that sits right on top of your main page. It kind of pauses the main workflow for a second so the user can focus on one specific thing without getting lost.
And you see these things everywhere. We're talking about those classic, "Are you sure?" confirmation pop-ups, quick little forms for editing a field, showing extra details about a record, or just flashing up an important warning. They're a core part of a good user interface.
Now, when you're building these in LWC, you've really got two main paths you can take. You can go the Salesforce way and use the standard modal from the Salesforce Lightning Design System, SLDS for short. It's fast, it's consistent. Or you can go your way and build a totally custom modal from the ground up, giving you complete creative control. We're going to walk through both.
So let's start with the approach that Salesforce recommends for most cases, using the SLDS standard modal. Why? Because it guarantees your pop-ups are going to look and feel like they belong in Salesforce.
And the best part? It's a ridiculously simple three-step process. First, we add a button to open it. Second, we drop in the standard SLDS markup for the modal itself. And third, we just wire it all together with a tiny bit of JavaScript. Let's break that down.
First things first, you need a trigger, something the user can click to make the modal appear. A simple lightning button is perfect. The most important part is that on-click handler, which we're going to point to a function called openModal.
Okay, now for the modal's HTML. You'll grab the standard code from the SLDS site for the header, body, and footer. But here's the absolute key. You have to wrap all of that code inside a template tag with this little directive, if true equals IOpen. That is literally the on and off switch for your modal.
And the JavaScript that powers this, it could not be simpler. All you need is a single Boolean property. We'll call it isOpen, and we'll start it off as false. When the openModal function runs, it flips it to true, and the modal appears. When closeModal runs, it flips it back to false, and poof, it's gone. That's it.
So the standard modal is fantastic. But what happens when you need a totally unique design? Well, that brings us to path number 2, building a completely custom modal from scratch.
When you go custom, you're basically throwing the SLDS rulebook out the window. It's just plain old HTML that you control with your very own CSS. This means total freedom over the look, the feel, any animations, everything. The real power is in your style sheet.
The first piece of the puzzle for any custom modal is that classic grayed out background. It's a super simple trick. You just need a div that's set to position fixed to cover the whole screen, and then you give it a background color using RGBA. That A is for alpha, which gives you the transparency.
And the second trick? This is a classic CSS pattern for getting perfect centering. You set your pop-up to position fixed, push it 50% from the top and 50% from the left, which gets its top left corner to the center. Then you use transform translate to pull it back by half of its own size. The result? A perfectly centered box no matter the screen size. So we can build a static modal. That's great. But the real power, the real magic, comes when they're dynamic. What if you need to show details about a specific record? You need a way to pass data into your modal. And the secret to making this happen is the @API decorator. In your child modal component, you can create a method and just pop @API right on top of it. This basically makes that method public so that its parent component can see it and call it. It's like opening up a direct line of communication. So from the parent component, all you do is use this.template.querySelector to get a direct reference to your modal component. Once you have it, you can call that public method we just created with @API and pass in whatever data you need, a record ID, a name, you name it.
Okay, knowing how to build a modal is one thing, but building a good modal is another. Now that we've got the mechanics down, let's go over a few essential best practices to make sure your modals are actually a pleasure to use.
First, just stick with the SLDS modal unless you have a really good reason not to. Consistency is king in Salesforce. Keep your content short and focused on one single task. And please, whatever you do, avoid putting modals inside of other modals. It's a nightmare for users. If you have a lot of content, just add overflow auto in your CSS to make it scroll. And a really nice touch, let the user click the background to close it.
if you take away just one single thing about modal design, let it be this. A great modal is focused, it solves one problem and only one problem. The second you try to cram too much stuff into a pop-up, you've already lost.
So there you have it. We've covered how to build standard modals, how to build custom ones, and how to make them dynamic and user-friendly. Your code works. But this brings us to one last, really important question to think about for your next project. Is it accessible to all users? Thinking about things like keyboard navigation and screen readers, that's what takes you from being a good developer to a great one.